When the police called to tell me they'd found my daughter wandering alone in a park, I knew there had to be some mistake. I've never been pregnant. I've never had a child. So why was a 3-year-old girl with my sister's eyes calling me Aunt Ava and carrying a teddy bear with my family name engraved on it? And why did discovering the truth about her past reveal secrets that someone was willing to kill to keep hidden? The morning light filtered through the tall windows of my Boston loft, casting long shadows across canvases that had become my entire world. I'm Ava Carter, 32 years old, and for the past decade my art studio has been both my sanctuary and my prison. Every brushstroke, every portrait I create tells someone else's story, but somehow I've forgotten how to tell my own. My loft sits on the 4th floor of a converted warehouse in the South End, where the city hums just loud enough to keep me company, but never loud enough to interrupt my thoughts. The exposed brick walls are lined with portraits of strangers, families, couples celebrating anniversaries, children captured in moments of pure joy. It's ironic, really. I spend my days painting other people's happiness, their connections, their love, while I live in this beautiful isolation I've carefully constructed around myself. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Coffee at 6, emails by 7, paintbrush in hand by 8. I was working on a commission for the Henderson family, trying to capture the way their youngest daughter's eyes crinkled when she laughed. It's these details that make a portrait come alive, the tiny imperfections that reveal the soul beneath the surface. I've always been good at seeing what others miss, at finding the story, hidden in a glance or a gesture. But I never saw what was coming. The call came at 11:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was cleaning my brushes, getting ready to call it a night. The harsh ring of my phone cut through the quiet like a blade, and when I saw Boston Police Department on the caller ID, my blood went cold. You know that feeling when your heart drops into your stomach and your mind immediately jumps to the worst possible scenarios. That's exactly what happened to me. Ms. Carter, this is Officer Rodriguez with the Boston Police Department. We need you to come down to the station immediately. My hands were shaking as I gripped the phone. What's wrong? What happened? Ma'am, we found a child tonight. A little girl about 3 years old. She was wandering alone in Franklin Park around 9 p.m. She's safe, but we need you to come in right away. I felt like the room was spinning. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Why are you calling me about a lost child? There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear papers rustling. Ma'am, according to our records, you're listed as the emergency contact. The child's name is Lily Carter, and she's registered as your daughter. The paintbrush fell from my hand, clattering onto the hardwood floor. There has to be some mistake. I don't have a daughter. I've never been pregnant. I don't have any children. Ms. Carter, I understand this is confusing, but we really need you to come in. Can you be here within the hour? My mind was racing, trying to make sense of something that made no sense at all. Lily Carter. The last name was mine, but I'd never heard of this child in my life. How could I be listed as someone's emergency contact when I lived completely alone? How could there be paperwork somewhere claiming I had a daughter I'd never given birth to? I threw on the first clothes I could find, jeans and an old sweater, and grabbed my keys with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The drive to the police station felt like a nightmare, like I was moving through thick fog where nothing was quite real. Boston streets were mostly empty at that hour, just the occasional taxi or late-night delivery truck, their headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Every red light felt like an eternity. My mind kept spinning with questions that had no answers. Could this be some kind of identity theft? Had someone stolen my information and used it for fake documents? But why would anyone do that? And why would they use my name for a child's emergency contact? The police station was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights too bright, that institutional green paint on the walls, and the smell of old coffee and stress that seems to permeate every government building. Officer Rodriguez met me at the front desk, a middle-aged man with kind eyes who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else at midnight, dealing with confused families and lost children. Ms. Carter, thank you for coming so quickly. I know this is a strange situation. Strange doesn't begin to cover it, I said, my voice barely steady. Can you please explain to me how a child I've never met, somehow has my name and information. He led me down a hallway lined with notices and safety posters, past offices with their lights still on, where other officers were handling their own middle of the night crises. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, creating this surreal atmosphere where everything felt both too bright and somehow shadowy at the same time. The little girl was found by a jogger in Franklin Park. She was alone, no adults in sight, and she was clearly distressed. When we brought her in, she had this with her. He handed me a small slip of paper worn and folded many times. In careful handwriting, someone had written, "If anything happens to me, please contact Ava Carter," followed by my phone number and address. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking. The handwriting looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. It was neat, precise, the kind of careful script that suggested someone had taken time to make sure every letter was perfect. But I had no memory of writing this. No memory of anyone asking me to be their emergency contact. "There's more," Officer Rodriguez said gently. "The child keeps asking for someone she calls Aunt Ava. She seems to know you even though you don't know her." My legs felt weak. Aunt Ava. The only person who had ever called me that was my sister Mia, and she died in a car accident 3 years ago. Mia was 25 when she died, brilliant and beautiful, and gone too soon. She'd been working on her PhD in biochemistry, had her whole life ahead of her. The grief of losing her had nearly destroyed me, and I'd spent the last 3 years trying to rebuild myself from the pieces. But Mia never had any children. She was so focused on her research on making groundbreaking discoveries that would change the world. She barely had time for dating, let alone starting a family. We talked every week, shared everything with each other. If she had been pregnant, if she had given birth, I would have known. "Wouldn't I? I need to see her," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "I need to see this little girl." Officer Rodriguez nodded and led me further into the station, past more offices and interview rooms, until we reached a small area that had been set up to be more child-friendly. There were colorful chairs, some toys scattered around, and softer lighting that didn't make everything look like a crime scene. And there she was, sitting in a chair that was too big for her, clutching a worn teddy bear, was the most beautiful little girl I'd ever seen. She had dark curly hair that fell just past her shoulders, and when she looked up at me, I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. She had Mia's eyes, not just similar eyes, not just the same color, but exactly Mia's eyes. That deep brown that looked almost black in dim light, but caught gold flecks when the light hit them just right. The shape, the way her eyelashes curved, even the way she tilted her head slightly when she was studying something new, it was all Mia. "Aunt Ava," she said in a small voice, and my heart shattered into a million pieces. I knelt down in front of her chair, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my whole world had just shifted on its axis. "Hi, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Lily," she said, hugging her teddy bear tighter. "Where's Mama? I want Mama." The way she said it with such innocent trust, like she believed I would have all the answers, made me want to cry. But I couldn't fall apart, not when this little girl needed someone to be strong for her. Whatever was happening here, whatever impossible situation had brought us together, she was just a scared 3-year-old who needed comfort. "Can you tell me about Mama?" I asked gently, settling cross-legged on the floor so I wouldn't tower over her. Lily's face scrunched up in concentration. "Mama has pretty hair like mine, and she smells like flowers. But she went away and didn't come back. The mean man said, 'She's not coming back ever.'" My blood ran cold. Mean man, who was this child living with? And why did she think I was her Aunt Ava if her mother was still alive or had been alive recently? Officer Rodriguez caught my eye and gestured toward the hallway. I held up one finger, asking for a moment, and turned back to Lily. "Lily, I love your teddy bear." "What's his name?" She held up the bear, which I could now see was well loved, with patches where the fur had been worn smooth by countless hugs. "Mr. Buttons. Mama gave him to me when I was little." Around the bear's neck was a thin chain with a small silver nameplate, and when I leaned closer, I could just make out what was engraved there. Carter. The room started spinning again. Carter! My last name, Mia's last name. But how could this child have a toy with our family name if she wasn't related to us? And why did she look so much like Mia that it was physically painful to look at her? Lily. Do you remember Mama's name? She nodded solemnly. Mamma Mia, like the song. She used to sing it to me. And then, in a voice so small I had to lean in to hear her, she started humming a tune I recognized immediately. It was a lullaby Mia used to sing when we were kids, something our mother had sung to us before she died when we were young. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway with Officer Rodriguez, my mind reeling with possibilities I didn't want to consider. Officer Rodriguez, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there any chance this child is related to my sister? My sister Mia Carter died 3 years ago in a car accident. She was 25. He pulled out a tablet and started scrolling through information. We've been trying to piece together the child's background since we found her. The people she was living with, the Hendersons, claim they were temporary guardians, but their story doesn't add up. They said the mother abandoned the child with them 6 months ago and never came back, but they couldn't provide any documentation. The Hendersons. Do you mean they're not her real family? That's what we're trying to figure out. The child has no birth certificate on file, no medical records, no school enrollment. It's like she doesn't exist in the system, which is why your contact information was so important to us. I felt like I was in a dream, like nothing that was happening could possibly be real. Can you run a DNA test? I need to know if she's related to me. We can arrange that, but it will take a few days for results. In the meantime, Child Protective Services is going to need to place her somewhere safe. Given that you're the only contact we have and she clearly knows you, would you be willing to consider temporary guardianship while we sort this out? The question hit me like a freight train. Temporary guardianship. I lived alone, worked alone, had built my entire life around solitude and independence. I didn't know the first thing about taking care of a child. I could barely manage to feed myself some days, let alone be responsible for a 3-year-old. But when I looked back through the doorway, at Lily still clutching her teddy bear and humming that lullaby, I knew I couldn't walk away. Whether she was family or not, whether this was all some cosmic mistake or a cruel joke, I couldn't leave her alone in the system. She was scared and confused, and for some reason, she trusted me. What would temporary guardianship involve? I asked. We do a quick background check visit at your home to make sure it's suitable for a child, and then you'd be responsible for her care while we investigate her background and try to locate her family. It could be a few days, could be a few weeks. I thought about my loft with its exposed brick and hardwood floors, art supplies everywhere, no child safety, anything. I thought about my schedule, the commissions I had pending the quiet life I'd built, where I answered to no one and nothing. Then I thought about Mia, about how she would have never hesitated to help a child in need. She would have already been making plans, figuring out how to transform her space, researching everything about childcare and development. Mia never backed down from a challenge, especially when someone needed help. I'll do it. I said the words coming out before I'd fully decided. I'll take temporary guardianship. Officer Rodriguez smiled for the first time that night. I think you're making the right choice, Ms. Carter. Let me get the paperwork started. As he walked away to handle the arrangements, I went back to sit with Lily. She looked up at me with those impossibly familiar eyes, and I felt something shift inside me like a door opening that I'd kept locked for years. Lily, would you like to come stay with me for a while, until we figure out where your mama is? She nodded, then climbed down from the chair and walked over to me. Without hesitation, she crawled into my lap and rested her head against my chest, still holding Mr. Buttons. Will you sing the song? She asked sleepily. And so I did. I sang the lullaby that Mia used to sing that our mother had sung before her, sitting in a police station at 1 a.m. with a child who might be my niece. might be a stranger, but who had somehow become my responsibility. As I sang, I felt like I was stepping into a story I'd never written, taking on a role I'd never auditioned for. But for the first time in 3 years, since Mia died, I felt like I had a purpose beyond my own carefully constructed solitude. The night had started with me cleaning paintbrushes in my quiet loft. It was ending with me signing papers to become the temporary guardian of a little girl who called me Aunt Ava and carried my family name on a chain around her teddy bear's neck. Sometimes, life changes in an instant, in ways you never saw coming. Sometimes a phone call at midnight opens a door you didn't even know existed. And sometimes, when you think you're finally safe in the life you've built, the universe sends you exactly what you didn't know you needed. As we left the police station together, Lily's small hand in mine, I realized this was either going to be the biggest mistake I'd ever made, or the beginning of something I'd been waiting for without knowing it. The drive home was quiet, except for Lily's soft breathing as she dozed in the car seat Officer Rodriguez had helped me install. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, still not quite believing this was real. In a few hours, my carefully ordered world was about to be completely upended by a 3-year-old who might hold the key to mysteries I didn't even know existed. But as I pulled into the parking garage beneath my building, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years' anticipation. Not the anxiety that usually accompanied change, but genuine curiosity about what tomorrow would bring. Little did I know that tomorrow would bring answers I wasn't prepared for, and questions that would change everything I thought I knew about my sister, my family, and myself. The next morning brought a different kind of light through my loft windows. Instead of the familiar solitude that usually greeted me, there was Lily curled up on my couch under one of my paint-stained throw blankets, Mr. Buttons tucked safely in her arms. She looked so small in my space, like a delicate watercolor painting in a room full of bold oils. I'd barely slept. Every hour I'd found myself checking on her, making sure she was still breathing, still safe. It's funny how quickly protective instincts can kick in for someone you've known less than 12 hours. I kept thinking about what Officer Rodriguez had said about the Hendersons, about their story not adding up. What had this little girl been through? And why did looking at her feel like staring into my own past? The call came at 8:30 a.m. sharp. Detective Mia Martinez introduced herself with the kind of voice that immediately made you feel like you were talking to someone who actually cared about solving problems, not just processing paperwork. "Ms. Carter, I know last night was overwhelming. I'd like to meet with you this morning to go over some additional information we've uncovered about Lily's situation. Would 10 o'clock work for you?" I glanced over at Lily, who was just starting to stir, rubbing her eyes with tiny fists. "Yes, but I'll need to bring Lily with me. I don't have anyone to watch her." "Actually, that's perfect. I'd like to observe how she interacts with you. Sometimes children reveal things through behavior that they can't express in words." By 9:30, I had managed to find some clothes that might fit Lily from a bag of items the police had recovered from wherever she'd been staying. Everything was too big, but we made it work. She was surprisingly cooperative about getting dressed, though she insisted on carrying Mr. Buttons everywhere, and kept asking when we were going to see Mama. The drive back to the police station felt different in daylight. Boston looked normal, people heading to work, joggers in the common life, proceeding as usual, while my world had been completely turned upside down. Lily sat in the back seat, strapped into the car seat I'd purchased at an all-night pharmacy, watching the city go by with an intensity that seemed unusual for a 3-year-old. "Aunt Ava," she said suddenly, "why don't the buildings move?" It was such an unexpected question that I almost laughed. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "The big boxes. They just sit there. Don't they get tired?" I realized she was talking about the buildings, and something about her perspective, the way she saw the world, reminded me so strongly of Mia that it took my breath away. Mia had always asked questions like that as a child, seeing everything from angles no one else considered. Detective Martinez was waiting for us at the station, and I immediately understood why Officer Rodriguez had seemed relieved to hand this case over to her. She was probably in her early 40s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that missed nothing. But more importantly, She had that rare quality of being completely present when she talked to you, like you were the only person in the world at that moment. Lily, she said, crouching down to the little girl's eye level. I love your teddy bear. Can you tell me his name? Mr. Buttons, Lily replied, holding the bear up proudly. Mama gave him to me when I was very little. Detective Martinez glanced at me over Lily's head, and I could see her making mental notes. That's wonderful. Did Mama tell you anything special about Mr. Buttons? Lily nodded solemnly. He keeps the bad dreams away, and he knows all the songs Mama used to sing. Ms. Carter. Detective Martinez said, standing and gesturing toward her office. Could we talk for a few minutes? Lily, would you like to color some pictures while Aunt Ava and I chat? She led us to a small office that actually looked like a place where people worked, not like an interrogation room. There were family photos on her desk, a coffee mug that said, World's Okayest Detective, and a window that looked out onto a courtyard where you could see actual trees. She'd clearly made an effort to create a space that felt human. First, let me say how grateful we are that you stepped up last night. Too many children in Lily's situation end up in the system with strangers. Having someone she clearly trusts makes all the difference. I watched through the glass partition as Lily carefully selected crayons from a box Detective Martinez had provided. She was drawing with intense concentration, her tongue poking out slightly the way Mia used to do when she was focused on something important. Detective Martinez, I need you to understand something. I genuinely have no idea who this child is, or why she thinks I'm her aunt. But there are things about her that are making me question everything I thought I knew about my family. She leaned forward, her expression serious. Tell me about that. My sister Mia died 3 years ago in a car accident. She was 25, working on her PhD in biochemistry at Harvard. We were incredibly close. We talked every week, shared everything. If she had been pregnant, if she had given birth to a child, I would have known. Detective Martinez was taking notes, but she kept her eyes on me. And yet, Lily looks exactly like Mia did at that age. Not similar, exactly. Same eyes, same expressions, same way of tilting her head when she's thinking. And last night she started humming a lullaby that only my family knew. Our mother used to sing it to us before she died when we were young. Have you considered the possibility that your sister might have been pregnant and chosen not to tell you? The question hit me like a physical blow. No, that's impossible. Mia told me everything. When she had her wisdom teeth out, when she failed her first organic chemistry exam, when she had a crush on her lab partner. We didn't keep secrets from each other. But even as I said it, doubt was creeping in. Had there been times, in those last few months when Mia seemed distant phone calls that were shorter than usual, I'd attributed it to her being busy with her research, stressed about her dissertation. But what if there had been something else? Ms. Carter, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've learned that families often have secrets that even the closest members don't know about, especially when it comes to unplanned pregnancies. Sometimes people make choices they think will protect the people they love. Through the window, I could see Lily, holding up her drawing to show us. It was a picture of 2 stick figures, holding hands, one tall and one small. Above them, she'd drawn what looked like a yellow sun, but with a face. A smiling face. She's drawing you, Detective Martinez observed. Look at how she positioned the figures. The smaller one is reaching up to the larger one, but the larger one is leaning down. That suggests comfort, protection, trust. But we just met last night. Children are incredibly intuitive about people. They can sense things adults miss. Lily clearly feels safe with you, which tells me this isn't the first time she's encountered that feeling with someone who looks like you or sounds like you. Detective Martinez pulled out a file folder and opened it on her desk. I need to share some information we've gathered about where Lily was living. The Hendersons, the couple who had her, have a history with Child Protective Services. Not abuse exactly, but questionable judgment. They've taken in several children over the years under informal arrangements that don't go through proper channels. My blood ran cold. What kind of arrangements? The kind where desperate parents or relatives pay them to care for children, without involving lawyers or social workers. It's not technically illegal if it's temporary, but it's not safe either. The children have no legal protections, no oversight. Are you saying someone paid them to take care of Lily? That's what we're trying to determine. The Hendersons claim a woman showed up 6 months ago, said she was in trouble, and needed someone to watch her daughter for a few weeks. She paid them $2,000 in cash and promised to come back. But she never did. According to them, no. They say they tried to contact her, but had no phone number. No address, just a first name. When the money ran out and she didn't return, they started talking about taking Lily to social services, but they never actually did it. I felt sick, thinking about what Lily might have experienced in that house. Detective Martinez, you said they have a history. What kind of history? 3 complaints over the past 5 years. Nothing that stuck but concerning patterns. Children who seemed malnourished, families who reported missing children who turned out to be staying with the Hendersons without anyone knowing where they were. Oh God, how long was Lily with them? Based on what they're telling us, 6 months, but we're not sure we believe their timeline. I looked back at Lily, who was now drawing what appeared to be a house with an unusually large number of windows. Everything about this situation was wrong. This beautiful, intelligent little girl had been living with people who collected children like stray cats in a system that didn't even acknowledge her existence. Detective Martinez, about the DNA test, how quickly can we get results? We can have the basic paternal test done within 48 hours. If you're related to Lily, we'll know by Thursday. And if we are related, then we start trying to piece together how she ended up with the Hendersons and what happened to her mother. The weight of all this was settling on me like a heavy blanket. If Lily was Mia's daughter, that meant my sister had been pregnant, had given birth, and had somehow ended up in a situation desperate enough that she'd paid strangers to care for her child. It meant the sister I thought I knew better than anyone had been living an entirely different life that I knew nothing about. There's something else, Detective Martinez said gently. The teddy bear Lily carries. We examined it more closely this morning. She pulled out an evidence bag containing Mr. Button's. Even through the plastic, I could see the silver nameplate more clearly. Carter was indeed engraved there, but underneath it in smaller letters was something else. What does it say? It says, "For my brave girl. Love, Mama M." The room started spinning. Mama M. Mia had always signed cards and notes with just her initial, a quirk left over from childhood when she was too impatient to write out her full name. But this meant Mia had given Lily this bear. Mia had known this child. "Ms. Carter, are you all right?" I realized I was gripping the arms of my chair so tightly my knuckles had gone white. That's my sister's signature, the way she signed things. She always just used M. So you're saying this teddy bear came from your sister? It had to, but I don't understand how that's possible. Detective Martinez closed the file and leaned back in her chair. Ms. Carter, I think you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that your sister's life in those final months was more complicated than you knew. People sometimes make choices that seem impossible to understand from the outside, especially when they're trying to protect someone they love. Through the glass, Lily was holding up another drawing. This one showed 3 stick figures, 2 tall ones, and 1 small one in the middle. Above them, she'd drawn what looked like a star. She's drawing her family, Detective Martinez said softly. Her version of her family. But there are 3 people in that picture. Yes. And yesterday, there were only 2 people in your family. Today, there might be 3. The truth was starting to settle in, even though my mind was fighting it. The physical resemblance, the lullaby, the teddy bear with Mia's signature, the way Lily had known to call me Aunt Ava. It was all too specific, too personal, to be coincidence. If Lily is Mia's daughter, I said slowly, then Mia was pregnant when she died, which means this little girl has been without her mother for potentially years, not months. That's one possibility we're considering. But then who brought her to the Hendersons 6 months ago? And why did they wait so long? Those are the questions we need to answer, It's possible someone else had been caring for Lily after your sister's death, and something happened that made them unable to continue. I thought about Mia's funeral, about the people who had come to pay their respects. Her professors, her lab partners, college friends, our few remaining relatives. Had one of them known about Lily? Had someone been keeping this secret for 3 years? Detective Martinez, I need to see Mia's belongings. The things from her apartment after she died. I went through everything. But if I wasn't looking for signs of a pregnancy or a child, I might have missed something. That's a good idea. Sometimes we only see what we're prepared to see. Lily appeared at the door of the office holding her drawings. Aunt Ava, I made pictures for you. She climbed onto my lap without hesitation, spreading her artwork across Detective Martinez's desk. In addition to the family pictures she'd drawn, what appeared to be a garden with flowers in every color of the rainbow. Tell me about this one, sweetheart, I said, pointing to the garden. That's where Mama and I planted flowers, before she went to the Sky Place. Detective Martinez and I exchanged glances. Sky Place. Lily, when did Mama go to the Sky Place? She scrunched up her forehead, thinking hard. After the loud noises, after the car got broken. My heart stopped. What loud noises, baby? The crash noises, and then Mama was sleeping in the white bed and she couldn't wake up. Detective Martinez leaned forward gently. Lily, were you there when the car got broken? Lily nodded seriously. I was in my special seat, but I didn't get hurt. Mama made sure I was safe first. The pieces were falling into place in a way that made me feel like I was drowning. Mia had been in the car accident with Lily. She'd been pregnant when she died, or had already given birth, and somehow this child had survived the crash that killed my sister. Who took care of you after Mama went to the Sky Place? Detective Martinez asked in the gentlest voice I'd ever heard. The nice lady with the yellow hair. She said she was Mama's friend. She took care of me for a long, long time. But then she got sick and she had to go to the Sky Place too. Another piece of the puzzle. Someone had been caring for Lily for years after Mia's death, someone who knew Mia, someone who had eventually died or become unable to care for her. Lily, do you remember the nice lady's name, Dr. Sarah? She smelled like the hospital, but good hospital smell, not scary hospital smell. Dr. Sarah. I made a mental note to ask Detective Martinez to look into Mia's colleagues, particularly any women named Sarah who worked in medical fields. Sweetheart, I said, my voice thick with emotion. After Dr. Sarah went to the Sky Place, where did you go? The house with too many kids. The man and lady there were loud sometimes. But I had Mr. Button, so I wasn't scared. The Hendersons. She'd been moved from this Dr. Sarah to the Henderson house, probably when Sarah became ill or died. Detective Martinez was taking notes rapidly. Lily, you're being very brave telling us about all this. Can you remember anything else about Dr. Sarah? Did she have pictures of Mama? Lily nodded enthusiastically. Lots of pictures, Mama in the white coat like Dr. Sarah, and books with Mama's name inside. Books with Mama's name. Big books with hard words. Dr. Sarah said Mama was very smart and wrote important things in the books. Research journals. Academic publications. If this Dr. Sarah had been a colleague of Mia's, she would have had access to Mia's research, might have been working on projects with her. I felt like I was seeing my sister's life through a completely different lens. Instead of the focused, solitary graduate student, I thought I knew there was this whole other Mia who had been pregnant, who had given birth, who had been raising a child while pursuing her PhD. How had she managed it all? And why hadn't she told me? Ms. Carter, Detective Martinez said quietly. I think we have enough information to start building a timeline, but I need to ask you something difficult. Are you prepared for the possibility that the DNA test will confirm Lily is your niece? I looked down at this little girl who had somehow found her way to me, who was drawing pictures of gardens and families and sky places where people she loved had gone. She was humming again that same lullaby, and she fit in my arms like she belonged there. I think I've known since the moment I saw her, I admitted. The question isn't whether she's family. The question is what I'm going to do about it. And what are you going to do about it? I thought about my loft, about my carefully constructed solitude, about the life I'd built around the absence of family. Then I thought about Mia, about how she would have moved heaven and earth to protect this little girl, about how she had protected her, even in her final moments, making sure Lily was safe in her car seat before the crash. I'm going to take care of her, I said, surprising myself with how certain I sounded. However long it takes to sort this out, however complicated it gets, I'm going to make sure she's safe and loved. Lily looked up at me with those eyes that were so much like Mia's. Are you going to the Sky Place too, Aunt Ava? No, sweetheart, I'm staying right here with you. She smiled, then the first real smile I'd seen from her, and nestled closer to me. Good. I don't want to go to another house with too many kids. Detective Martinez smiled too. I don't think you'll have to, Lily. I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be. As we prepared to leave the police station, Detective Martinez handed me her card. The DNA results will be ready Thursday morning. In the meantime, I'm going to start looking into Dr. Sarah and trying to piece together the timeline of how Lily ended up with the Hendersons. What about the Hendersons? Are they in trouble? We're investigating. Taking money to care for children without proper legal arrangements is problematic, especially when those children end up wandering alone in parks at night. But our priority right now is making sure Lily is safe and helping her process what she's been through. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in her car seat, clutching Mr. Buttons and one of her drawings. I kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, this little person who had appeared in my life like a miracle and a mystery, all rolled into one. I was starting to understand that the next few days weren't just going to give me answers about Lily's identity. They were going to change everything I thought I knew about my sister, my family, and myself. The DNA test would tell us if we were related by blood, but I already knew we were connected by something deeper than genetics. Mia had found a way to bring her daughter to me even 3 years after her death. She'd made sure that when Lily needed family the most, she would find her way to the one person who would love her unconditionally. As I pulled into my parking garage, I realized I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready for whatever the DNA test would reveal, ready to learn the truth about Mia's secret life, ready to become the guardian this little girl needed. The afternoon sun was streaming through my loft windows when we got home, casting everything in golden light. Lily woke up as I carried her upstairs, and she looked around my space with fresh eyes. Aunt Ava, she said sleepily, can we paint pictures together? Yes, sweetheart, we can paint as many pictures as you want. And for the first time in 3 years, my art studio didn't feel like a place where I was hiding from the world. It felt like a place where we were going to build something new together. The call from Child Protective Services came Wednesday morning, 2 days after I'd brought Lily home. I was watching her eat cereal at my kitchen island, her legs swinging from the bar stool that was still too tall for her, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Carter, this is Jennifer Walsh from the Department of Children and Families. We need to schedule a wellness check for Lily as part of the temporary guardianship process. Would this afternoon work for you? My stomach dropped. I'd been so focused on getting DNA results and piecing together Lily's past that I hadn't fully considered what the official process would entail. Is there something wrong? It's standard procedure, but I do need to let you know that during her initial examination at the hospital, we found some concerning signs that require follow-up. What kind of signs? There was a pause and I could hear papers rustling. I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Could you bring Lily to our office at 2 p.m.? After I hung up, I looked at Lily, who was carefully fishing marshmallows out of her Lucky Charms and eating them one by one. She seemed happy, or at least content. But now, I found myself searching for signs I might have missed. Was she too thin? Too quiet? Had I been so overwhelmed by the mystery of who she was that I'd failed to see evidence of what she'd been through? Lily, sweetheart, we need to go visit some nice people this afternoon. They want to make sure you're healthy and happy. She looked up at me with those dark eyes that reminded me so much of Mia. Are they going to take me away from you? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. No, baby, they just want to check on you. Like when you go to the doctor for a checkup. But the truth was, I didn't know what they might find, or what it might mean for our temporary arrangement. The Department of Children and Families office was in a converted Victorian house in Jamaica Plain, painted a cheerful yellow that was probably meant to be welcoming, but somehow felt ominous to me. Jennifer Walsh met us in the lobby, a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and the kind of smile that suggested she'd seen everything and wasn't easily shocked. "Lily, I'm so glad to meet you," she said, crouching down to Lily's level. "I love your teddy bear." "What's his name?" "Mr. Buttons," Lily replied, holding the bear closer. "He keeps me safe." Jennifer's expression softened. "I bet he does. He looks like a very good protector." She led us to a small room with child-sized furniture and toys scattered around. It was clearly designed to put kids at ease, but I could feel my anxiety ratcheting up with every step. "Ms. Carter, while Lily plays, I'd like to review her medical examination with you." She opened a file folder and pulled out what looked like a hospital report. When Lily was brought to the emergency room 2 nights ago, the attending physician noted several areas of concern. My heart started racing. "What kind of concerns?" "There are bruises on her upper arms that appear to be from adult fingers. Grip marks. They're not fresh, probably a week or two old, but they're consistent with someone grabbing her forcefully." I felt sick. Someone had grabbed this tiny child hard enough to leave bruises that were still visible weeks later. There's also evidence of chronic malnutrition. She's significantly underweight for her age and height, and her dental exam showed signs of poor nutrition over an extended period. I watched Lily, playing with a set of blocks, building what looked like a house, completely absorbed in her task. How had she endured all of this and still maintained such a sweet, trusting nature? The psychological evaluation noted signs of hypervigilance, which is common in children who've experienced trauma or neglect. She startles easily at loud noises, and she seems to watch adults carefully for signs of anger or aggression. Is that why she's so quiet, so well-behaved? Possibly. Children who've been in unpredictable or unsafe environments often learn to be very compliant as a survival mechanism. Jennifer closed the file and looked at me directly. "Ms. Carter, I need to ask you some difficult questions about the Hendersons, the family she was staying with." "Of course. Ask me anything." "How much do you know about their situation?" "Only what Detective Martinez told me, that they had a history with CPS that they took in children under informal arrangements." "The Henderson case is more serious than we initially realized. We've now had 3 other families come forward saying their children stayed there under similar circumstances. In each case, the children showed signs of neglect when they were removed. "You mean other children were taken away from them?" "Yes, but not by us. In each case, family members eventually tracked down their children and took them back. The Hendersons operate in a gray area where desperate people pay them to care for children without involving official channels." I felt a surge of anger so strong, it surprised me. They were running some kind of unlicensed foster care operation. Something like that, and unfortunately without oversight, the care the children received was often inadequate. I looked over at Lily again. She had finished building her block house and was now making a little family out of wooden figures, arranging them carefully inside. "How long do you think she was there?" "Based on the medical evidence, possibly longer than the 6 months they claimed. Some of these signs suggest chronic long-term neglect." "What does this mean for her placement with me?" Jennifer's expression became more serious. "It means we need to move quickly to establish permanent guardianship, if that's what you want to pursue. Children who've experienced this level of trauma need stability and consistency. The temporary arrangement we have now isn't sufficient for her long-term well-being. What would permanent guardianship involve? A more thorough background check, a home study, character references, financial review. The process usually takes several months, but given Lily's circumstances and the fact that you appear to be family, we might be able to expedite it. And if the DNA test confirms she's my niece, That would significantly strengthen your case. Blood relatives typically get preference in placement decisions. As we talked, Lily came over and climbed onto my lap, settling against me like she belonged there. She was so light, too light for a child her age, and I found myself automatically adjusting to support her small frame. The important thing right now, Jennifer continued, is that Lily is clearly bonding with you. She seeks you out for comfort. She's responding well to your care, and her stress levels seem to have decreased significantly since she's been with you. How can you tell? She's making eye contact more readily. She's playing independently, and she's starting to show normal childhood behaviors like curiosity and exploration. When children feel safe, they start to behave like children again instead of like tiny adults trying to survive. We spent another hour going through paperwork and scheduling follow-up appointments. By the time we left, I felt overwhelmed by the responsibility I was taking on, but also more determined than ever to see it through. This little girl had been through hell, and somehow she'd ended up with me. I wasn't going to let her down. The drive home was quiet, except for Lily humming in the back seat. She'd been doing that more often, little snippets of melodies that I was starting to recognize. Some were lullabies, some were children's songs, and some were tunes I couldn't identify, but that seemed to bring her comfort. When we pulled into my parking garage, I noticed a package sitting by the door to the stairwell that led up to my loft. It was a small brown box with no return address, just my name written in careful handwriting. "What's that, Aunt Ava?" Lily asked as I picked up the package. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. Let's go upstairs and see." The package was heavier than it looked, and when I shook it gently, I could hear something shifting inside. Once we were in the loft, I found a pair of scissors and carefully opened it while Lily watched with the intense curiosity that seemed to be returning as she felt safer. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the kind with lined pages and a strap that wrapped around to keep it closed. Underneath it was a folded piece of paper with my name on the outside. I opened the note first, and my breath caught when I saw the signature at the bottom, Fiona Chen. Fiona had been one of Mia's lab partners during her PhD program. I remembered her from department parties and the occasional dinner when she and Mia were working on a particularly challenging project. She was brilliant, quiet, and completely devoted to her research in molecular biology. The note was short, but packed with information that made my hand shake as I read it. "Ava, I heard about what happened with Lily through mutual friends in the department. I've been carrying this secret for 3 years, and I can't keep it anymore." This was Mia's journal from her final year. She made me promise never to show it to anyone, but circumstances have changed. She was pregnant during her last semester, and she was terrified about how it would affect her career and her relationship with Dr. Lee. There are things in here that explain everything, but also things that raise new questions. I think you deserve to know the truth about what your sister was going through. Call me when you're ready to talk. My number is on the back of this note. Dr. Lee? I knew that name. Dr. Jonathan Lee had been Mia's thesis advisor, a respected researcher in biochemistry who had helped guide her doctoral work. But why would Mia be worried about how her pregnancy would affect her relationship with him? With trembling fingers, I opened the journal. Mia's handwriting filled the pages, that same precise script I remembered from birthday cards and grocery lists. But these weren't casual observations or research notes. These were the private thoughts of a young woman facing an impossible situation. "Lily, sweetheart, can you play with your blocks for a few minutes? I need to read something important." She nodded and settled on the floor with her toys while I curled up on the couch and began to read my sister's words. The first entry was dated about 8 months before Mia's death. "I can't believe this is happening. The test is positive. I'm pregnant, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. Jonathan doesn't know yet. How can I tell him? This could ruin everything for both of us." Jonathan. Not Dr. Lee, but Jonathan. The familiar way she wrote his name suggested a relationship that went beyond advisor and student. I flipped ahead looking for more entries, and found one from a few weeks later. "Told Jonathan today. He was quiet for so long I thought he was going to ask me to leave the program. Then, He said we'd figure it out together. I don't know what that means, but at least I'm not facing this alone. My mind was reeling. Mia had been involved with her thesis advisor, and he was the father of her child. This explained why she hadn't told me. Academic relationships between professors and graduate students were complicated at best, potentially career-ending at worst. Another entry, this one from about 6 months before her death. The pregnancy is showing now. I've been wearing loose clothes, but people are starting to notice. Jonathan thinks I should take a leave of absence, but I'm so close to finishing my dissertation. If I leave now, I might never get back on track. We talked about adoption. There are so many couples who want babies who could give this child everything I can't. But the thought of giving away a piece of myself, a piece of us, breaks my heart. Adoption. Mia had been considering adoption, but Lily was here with me, which meant either the adoption had fallen through or something else had happened. I kept reading, watching my sister's internal struggle play out across the pages. She wrote about morning sickness during important lab meetings, about hiding her changing body under oversized lab coats, about the fear that her peers would think she wasn't serious about her career if they knew she was pregnant. But she also wrote about hope, about feeling the baby move for the first time during a particularly boring seminar, about imagining what the child would look like, whether it would have her eyes or Jonathan's analytical mind. Then I found an entry that made me stop breathing. Something's wrong with Jonathan. He's been distant lately, avoiding me, except when we absolutely have to discuss my research. Yesterday, I overheard him on the phone talking about the situation and how it needs to be handled discreetly. I don't think he's talking about helping me anymore. I think he's trying to figure out how to protect his reputation. The entries became more sporadic after that, but also more desperate. Mia wrote about feeling isolated, about Jonathan pressuring her to make decisions quickly, about her growing fear that she was completely alone in this situation. Then, I found the entry that changed everything. I've made my decision. I'm keeping the baby. I don't care what Jonathan thinks, what the department thinks, what anyone thinks. This is my child, and I'm going to find a way to make it work. I've been in touch with someone who helps women in situations like mine. Her name is Dr. Sarah Fleming, and she works in pediatric care. She's offered to help me navigate this, to be there when the baby comes. She understands what it's like to be a woman in science facing an unplanned pregnancy. Dr. Sarah, the same Dr. Sarah that Lily had mentioned, the woman with yellow hair who had taken care of her after Mia died. I flipped through more pages looking for additional information about Dr. Sarah and found scattered references to her throughout the final months of Mia's pregnancy. She had helped Mia find prenatal care under an assumed name to protect her privacy. She had been in the delivery room when Lily was born. She had promised to help Mia figure out how to balance motherhood with finishing her PhD. But the final entries in the journal were the most heartbreaking. Lily is perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. Dr. Sarah says she looks exactly like I did as a baby. I can't believe I ever considered giving her up for adoption. She's mine completely and utterly mine. Jonathan came to see us at the hospital. He seemed genuinely moved by Lily, but he's still worried about the scandal. He thinks I should finish my degree quietly and then move somewhere else to start over. Maybe he's right. Maybe Boston isn't the place for us anymore. Dr. Sarah has been incredible. She's helping me set up childcare so I can finish my dissertation. She even offered to let Lily stay with her sometimes if I need to travel for research. I never expected to find such a supportive friend in all of this chaos. The final entry was dated just a week before Mia's death. Something feels wrong. Jonathan has been asking too many questions about Lily, about our arrangements with Dr. Sarah. He keeps talking about what's best for everyone involved. I'm starting to think his idea of what's best might not include me keeping my daughter. I've made copies of all the important documents and given them to Dr. Sarah just in case. If anything happens to me, I trust her to take care of Lily. I've also written Ava's contact information in several places. If things go completely wrong, Lily needs to know she has family. The journal ended there. But now I had answers to questions I didn't even know I'd been asking. Mia had been pregnant by her thesis advisor. She'd hidden the pregnancy and given birth with the help of a colleague named Dr. Sarah Fleming. When Mia died in the car accident, Dr. Sarah had taken Lily and cared for her for years until something happened that forced her to place Lily with the Hendersons. But there were still so many unanswered questions. What had happened to Dr. Sarah? Why had she eventually given Lily to the Hendersons instead of contacting me directly? And what role had Dr. Jonathan Lee played in all of this? I reached for my phone and dialed the number Fiona had left. She answered on the second ring. Ava, I was hoping you'd call. Fiona, I just read the journal. I need to know everything you know about what happened to my sister. Can we meet? This isn't really a conversation for the phone. I have Lily with me. Bring her. She should hear this too in her own way. She's old enough to start understanding her story. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Harvard Square near the university where Mia had done her research. As I got Lily ready to go out again, I realized that this journal had given me the missing pieces of Mia's final months, but it had also opened up new mysteries that were potentially even more disturbing. If Dr. Jonathan Lee had been pressuring Mia to give up Lily, and if he'd been worried about protecting his reputation, what lengths might he have gone to in order to make his problem disappear? And what had really happened in that car accident that killed my sister but left Lily unharmed? Aunt Ava, Lily said as I helped her put on her jacket. Are we going to see more nice people? Yes, sweetheart. We're going to see someone who knew your mama when you were a baby. Will she tell me stories about Mama? I think she will. I think she has lots of stories to tell us. As we drove toward Harvard Square, I thought about how much my life had changed in just 3 days. I'd gone from being a solitary artist to being the guardian of a traumatized 3-year-old who might be my niece. I'd learned that my sister had lived an entire secret life in her final year, falling in love with her advisor, having a baby, and trying to navigate an impossible situation. But more than that, I'd discovered that Mia had been planning for this moment. She'd left breadcrumbs that led Lily to me when the time was right. Even in death, she'd been protecting her daughter and making sure she'd find her way to family. The coffee shop was crowded with university students and professors, the kind of place where intellectual conversations happened over fair trade coffee and locally sourced pastries. I spotted Fiona immediately sitting at a corner table with her laptop open and a stack of papers beside her. She looked exactly the same as she had 3 years ago, small and intense with straight black hair and glasses that were always slightly askew. When she saw us approaching, her face lit up with recognition and something that looked like relief. Lily, she said softly, you look so much like your mama. Lily hid behind my legs for a moment, then peered out with curiosity. Did you know my mama when she was working in the lab? I did. Your mama was the smartest person I ever met, and she loved you more than anything in the world. Fiona had ordered Lily a hot chocolate with extra marshmallows and had brought a small coloring book and crayons. While Lily settled in to color, Fiona and I talked in low voices about the secrets that had been keeping for 3 years. I knew about the pregnancy from the beginning, Fiona said. Mia was terrible at hiding things from people who knew her well. She was throwing up every morning for weeks before she finally told me what was going on. Why didn't she tell me? She was ashamed, not of being pregnant, but of the situation with Jonathan. She knew it would complicate everything, potentially destroy both their careers. She thought she could handle it quietly and tell you after she'd figured everything out. But it wasn't that simple. Nothing about that situation was simple. Jonathan Lee was married Ava. He had 2 teenage children and a wife who was very involved in university social functions. The scandal would have destroyed more than just careers. I felt sick. My sister had been involved with a married man, had gotten pregnant by someone who had everything to lose if their relationship became public. Is that why she was considering adoption? Because he wouldn't leave his family? Partly, but also because she genuinely wasn't sure she could handle single motherhood and finish her PhD. She was so close to a breakthrough in her research, something that could have changed cancer treatment forever. The timing was just terrible. But she decided to keep Lily. Yes, and I think Jonathan was furious about that decision. He'd been pushing for adoption from the beginning, and when Mia refused, he started making her life very difficult. He threatened to give her dissertation a failing grade. He suggested her research was flawed and that she might not graduate at all. He made it clear that if she kept the baby, her academic career was over. I watched Lily coloring a picture of a rainbow, completely absorbed in choosing the perfect shade of purple for one of the stripes. My sister had endured all of this stress while caring for this beautiful child, trying to protect them both from a man who saw them as threats to his carefully constructed life. Fiona, what happened to Dr. Sarah Fleming? Lily mentioned that she took care of her after Mia died, but then she had to go to the Sky Place too. Fiona's expression became even more serious. Sarah died 6 months ago. Cancer. She'd been battling it for over a year, but she kept it quiet because she didn't want anyone to worry about Lily's placement. So she took Lily to the Hendersons when she got too sick to care for her. That's what I believe happened, yes. Sarah was a private person, and she was trying to protect Lily from being put into the official foster care system. She thought the Hendersons were a temporary solution until she could recover or find a better arrangement. But she never recovered. No. And by the time I learned about Sarah's death and started looking into Lily's situation, she'd already been with the Hendersons for months. I felt a surge of anger at the adults who had failed this child. Dr. Sarah had meant well, but her secrecy had left Lily vulnerable to neglect and abuse. The Hendersons had taken advantage of a desperate situation, and somewhere in all of this was Dr. Jonathan Lee, who had wanted Lily to disappear from the beginning. Fiona, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. Do you think Jonathan Lee had anything to do with Mia's accident? The question hung in the air between us like a dangerous thing. Fiona was quiet for a long moment, glancing at Lily to make sure she wasn't listening. I don't know, she said finally, but I know he was putting enormous pressure on her in those final weeks. And I know he's the kind of man who thinks problems should be solved quietly and permanently. What does that mean? It means he's never faced consequences for anything in his life. He's wealthy, connected, and used to getting his way. When Mia refused to cooperate with his vision of how things should be handled, she became a problem that needed to be solved. I thought about the final entry in Mia's journal, about her feeling like something was wrong about Jonathan, asking too many questions about her arrangements with Dr. Sarah. Do you think he knew about Dr. Sarah? I think he knew everything. Jonathan Lee is the kind of man who makes it his business to know everything about situations that could affect him. As we talked, Lily finished her rainbow and started on a new picture, this one showing a house with a garden full of flowers. She was humming again that same lullaby, but now I recognized it as something more than just a comforting tune. It was a connection to her mother, a way of keeping Mia's memory alive even when she was too young to understand what she'd lost. Fiona, what happens now? Do I try to contact Jonathan Lee? I think you need to be very careful about that. He's still a powerful man in the academic community, and he spent 3 years believing this problem was solved. If he finds out Lily is alive and living with you, he might see it as a threat. A threat to what his reputation, his marriage, his career, his family, his entire life. Men, like Jonathan Lee, don't just protect themselves, Ava. They eliminate threats. The implication of what she was saying hit me like a cold wave. If Jonathan Lee had been willing to pressure a young mother into giving up her child, if he'd made threats about her academic career, what might he be willing to do if he discovered that child was now living with her aunt, who had access to Mia's journal and knew the truth about their relationship? What should I do? Get the DNA results, establish legal guardianship, build a paper trail that protects both you and Lily, and then when you're ready, decide whether you want to pursue the truth about what really happened to your sister. As we prepared to leave the coffee shop, Fiona handed me a business card. That's my current contact information. I'm not going anywhere, and I meant what I said about helping you through this. Mia was my friend, and Lily deserves to know the truth about her mother. Lily was quiet on the drive home, tired from another day of new people and serious conversations. But as we pulled into the parking garage, she spoke up from the back seat. "Aunt Ava, the lady with the glasses, was nice." "Yes, she was. She loved your mama very much." "Is she going to help us find out more about Mama?" I looked at her in the rearview mirror. This little girl who was old enough to understand that there were mysteries surrounding her past, but young enough to trust that the adults in her life would solve them for her. "Yes, sweetheart. She's going to help us learn all about your mama and how much she loved you." "Good," Lily said, hugging Mr. Buttons. "I want to know everything about Mama." As I carried her upstairs to the loft, I realized that learning everything about Mama was going to involve confronting some very dangerous people who had a lot to lose if the truth came out. But looking at this brave little girl who had survived so much already, I knew I didn't have a choice. Mia's journal had given me the beginning of the story. Tomorrow's DNA results would confirm what I already knew in my heart. And then the real work would begin protecting Lily, seeking justice for Mia, and making sure that the men who had failed both of them finally faced consequences for their actions. The sun was setting over Boston as we settled in for another evening together, and I realized that this was just the beginning of a much longer journey than I'd expected. But for the first time since this all started, I didn't feel like I was facing it alone. I had Lily, I had Fiona, and I had the truth. Tomorrow, I would find out if I also had the law on my side. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made Boston feel alive with possibility. I'd barely slept, alternating between watching Lily's peaceful face as she slept, curled up next to me in my bed and staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything Fiona had told me. The DNA results were due any moment, but in my heart, I already knew what they would say. Lily was sitting at my kitchen island, carefully eating pancakes cut into star shapes when my phone rang. Detective Martinez's name appeared on the screen, and my stomach immediately knotted with anticipation. "Ms. Carter, I have the DNA results." I stepped into my studio area far enough from Lily that she couldn't hear the conversation, but close enough that I could still see her. "And Lily is definitely your niece. The test confirms she's your sister's biological daughter with 99.9% certainty." Even though I'd been expecting it, hearing the official confirmation felt like a physical impact. This little girl eating star-shaped pancakes in my kitchen was family. She was Mia's daughter, my blood, the only piece of my sister that remained in this world. "There's more, Ms. Carter. While we were waiting for the DNA results, I've been digging deeper into Lily's background, trying to trace how she ended up with the Hendersons." "What did you find?" "Adoption records, private adoption records that were sealed. But with Lily's current situation, I was able to get a court order to access them." My blood went cold. "Adoption records. But she's been with Dr. Sarah Fleming." "That's what makes this complicated. According to these records, Lily was legally adopted 3 years ago, just a few months after your sister's death. The adoptive parents are listed as Dr. Jonathan Lee and Mrs. Patricia Lee." The room started spinning. Jonathan Lee had adopted Lily. The man who had pressured Mia to give her up, who had seen her as a threat to his reputation, had ended up legally adopting her. "I don't understand. How is that possible?" The records show that Dr. Sarah Fleming was listed as a temporary guardian immediately after the car accident. She had legal authority to make decisions about Lily's care because your sister had designated her as an emergency contact for the child. But then why didn't she adopt Lily herself? According to the paperwork, Dr. Fleming felt she couldn't provide the financial stability and two-parent household that adoption agencies prefer. She recommended the Lees as suitable adoptive parents, citing Dr. Lee's relationship with the biological mother and his desire to ensure the child's welfare. I felt like I was going to be sick. "Detective Martinez, there's something you need to know about Dr. Lee's relationship with my sister." "I'm listening." I told her everything. I told her about Mia's journal, about the affair, about Jonathan's pressure to give Lily up for adoption, about his threats regarding her academic career. Detective Martinez listened without interrupting. but I could hear her taking notes. Miss Carter, this changes everything. If Dr. Lee was the biological father and he pressured your sister into considering adoption, then adopted the child himself after her death, we're looking at a much more complex situation. What do you mean? It means he may have used his position of authority to manipulate the adoption process, and it raises serious questions about why Lily ended up with the Hendersons instead of remaining with her legal adoptive parents. Can you find out what happened? Why she wasn't with the Lees? I'm already working on it. In the meantime, you need to know that legally the Lees may still have parental rights to Lily. Your temporary guardianship could be challenged if they decide they want her back. The thought of losing Lily to the man who had made Mia's life hell in her final months was terrifying. What can I do? Document everything. Keep records of her care, her medical needs, her emotional state, and be prepared for the possibility that we may need to involve family court to sort out the legal issues. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table watching Lily color in a new coloring book while humming that familiar lullaby. She looked so content, so safe, and the thought that someone might try to take her away from me was unbearable. Aunt Ava, are you sad? She asked, looking up from her picture with those dark eyes that were so much like Mia's. I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just thinking about some grown-up things. Are the grown-up things about me? The question was so perceptive it caught me off guard. Some of them are about you, yes, but don't worry. I'm going to make sure you're safe and happy. She nodded seriously, then went back to her coloring. I know you will. You're like Mama that way. The simple trust in her voice strengthened my resolve. Whatever legal battles lay ahead, whatever confrontations I had to face, I wasn't going to let anyone hurt this child again. Detective Martinez called back an hour later with more information that made the situation even more complicated. I spoke with the adoption agency that handled the Lee adoption. According to their records, the adoption was finalized normally, but there were some unusual circumstances in the months that followed. What kind of circumstances? Mrs. Patricia Lee filed several complaints with the agency about the child's behavior. She claimed Lily was difficult to manage, wouldn't bond with the family, and was disruptive to their household. She was grieving. She'd just lost her mother. Exactly. But instead of seeking appropriate counseling or support, Mrs. Lee began pushing for the adoption to be dissolved. She wanted to return Lily to the state foster care system. I felt a surge of rage so intense it surprised me. They were going to abandon her again. Dr. Lee apparently opposed his wife's decision, but he was also dealing with pressure from the university. Rumors about his relationship with your sister had started circulating, and having Lily in their home was making it impossible for him to deny the allegations. So they found another solution. They found a way to make the problem disappear without officially dissolving the adoption. Dr. Fleming had become ill, and they arranged for Lily to stay with her temporarily while they worked things out. But Dr. Fleming never gave her back. No. And when Dr. Fleming became too ill to care for Lily, she made the decision to place her with the Hendersons, rather than returning her to people who had already rejected her once. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they created was uglier than I'd imagined. Lily had been passed from person to person, like an unwanted object, always by adults who claimed to have her best interests at heart, but who were really protecting themselves. Detective Martinez, I need Dr. Lee's address. Ms. Carter, I understand you're angry, but confronting him directly might not be the best approach. Maybe not, but it's the only approach I can live with. This man manipulated my sister, adopted her child, abandoned that child when it became inconvenient, and has spent 3 years pretending none of it happened. I think it's time he faced some consequences. There was a long pause. If you're determined to do this, don't go alone, and don't bring Lily. I'll call Fiona. She knew about the situation from the beginning. And Ms. Carter, be very careful what you say. If Dr. Lee feels threatened, he might try to use his legal status as Lily's adoptive father to take her away from you. After making arrangements for Fiona to watch Lily, I spent the afternoon researching everything I could find about Dr. Jonathan Lee. He lived in Wellesley, one of Boston's most exclusive suburbs, in a colonial mansion that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. He was a tenured professor, published researcher, and by all appearances a pillar of the academic community. But I knew the truth about what kind of man he really was. Fiona arrived at 5 o'clock bringing Chinese takeout and a small bag of toys for Lily. She took one look at my face and knew exactly what I was planning. "Are you sure about this? Ava? Men like Jonathan Lee don't like being cornered." "I'm sure." I need to look him in the eye and hear him explain how he could adopt a child and then abandon her when she became inconvenient. What if he tries to take Lily back? Then we'll fight him. But I don't think he wants Lily back. I think he wants to pretend she never existed. The drive to Wellesley took 40 minutes through rush hour traffic, giving me plenty of time to rehearse what I wanted to say. By the time I pulled into the circular driveway of the Lee mansion, I was calm, focused, and absolutely determined to get answers. The house was everything I'd expected. Pristine landscaping, expensive cars in the driveway windows, glowing with warm light that suggested a family enjoying a peaceful evening together. It was the kind of life that Mia had never had a chance to build for herself and Lily. I rang the doorbell and waited, my heart pounding, but my resolve steady. When the door opened, I found myself face to face with a woman in her late 40s, perfectly styled blonde hair, and the kind of polished appearance that suggested a life of leisure and privilege. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but cool. "I'm looking for Dr. Jonathan Lee. My name is Ava Carter." Her expression changed immediately, wariness replacing politeness. "What is this regarding?" "It's regarding his daughter, Lily." The color drained from her face. "I think you have the wrong house." "Mrs. Lee, I know about the adoption. I know about my sister Mia, and I know that Lily is currently in my care because she was found wandering alone in a park after being neglected by the people you paid to take care of her." For a moment, I thought she was going to close the door in my face. Then, I heard a man's voice from inside the house. "Patricia, who's at the door. Jonathan, you need to come here, now." Dr. Jonathan Lee appeared behind his wife, and I immediately understood why Mia had been attracted to him. He was handsome in the way successful men often are, with salt and pepper hair and intelligent eyes. But when he saw me, those eyes filled with something that looked like fear. "Ms. Carter," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "This is unexpected." "I'm sure it is. May I come in? I think we have quite a bit to discuss." Patricia Lee looked like she wanted to refuse, but Jonathan stepped aside and gestured for me to enter. Their foyer was larger than my entire studio, with marble floors and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Perhaps we should talk in my study," Jonathan said, leading me down a hallway lined with academic awards and family photos. His study was exactly what I'd expected: leather-bound books, mahogany furniture, and diplomas covering the walls. It was the office of a man who had built his entire identity around his intellectual achievements. "Ms. Carter, I assume this is about the child. Her name is Lily, and yes, this is about your daughter." He flinched when I said, "Your daughter," confirming what I'd suspected. He knew exactly who Lily was and what his relationship to her meant. "I don't know what you think you know about the situation, but it's more complicated than you realize." "Then explain it to me. Explain how you could pressure a young woman into considering giving up her child, then adopt that child yourself when she died, then abandon her when she became inconvenient." Jonathan sat down heavily, in his leather chair, suddenly looking older than his 50-something years. "Mia never wanted to give Lily up. That part is true, but she also knew she couldn't provide the kind of life a child deserves. So, you convinced her that you could..." I tried to help her see her options clearly. Raising a child as a single mother while trying to complete a PhD is incredibly difficult. I thought adoption might be better for everyone. Everyone meaning you, because having a baby with a graduate student would ruin your reputation. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. My marriage, my career, my children's respect for me. Yes, it would have destroyed everything I'd worked for. But you adopted Lily anyway. After Mia died, I felt responsible. Dr. Fleming came to me and said Lily needed a family. She thought Patricia and I could give her stability. But your wife didn't want her. His face crumpled slightly. Patricia tried. We both tried. But Lily was grieving, and she kept asking for her mama. She wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't bond with us. Patricia said it was like having a ghost in the house. So you gave up on her. We didn't give up. We thought Dr. Fleming could help her heal, and then maybe she could come back to us when she was ready. But she never came back. Dr. Fleming said Lily was doing better with her, that she felt safer with someone who had known her mother. We thought it was temporary, but then months passed and Dr. Fleming stopped returning our calls. I could see where this was heading. And when Dr. Fleming got sick, we didn't know she was sick until it was too late. By then, Lily had been placed with another family, and we thought maybe that was for the best. The Hendersons weren't a family. They were people who collected children for money. Jonathan's face went pale. I didn't know. Dr. Fleming said she'd found a good placement. We trusted her judgment. You trusted her judgment because it was convenient, because it meant you didn't have to deal with a child who reminded you of your mistakes. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that looked out onto his perfectly manicured lawn. Ms. Carter, you have every right to be angry, but you don't understand the pressure I was under. The university was investigating rumors about my relationship with Mia. My marriage was falling apart. My children were asking questions I couldn't answer. So you chose to protect yourself instead of protecting Lily. I chose to do what I thought was best for everyone involved. Everyone except Lily. When he turned back to me, there were tears in his eyes. You're right. I failed her. I failed Mia, and I failed Lily. I've been carrying that guilt for 3 years. Guilt doesn't help her now. What helps her is having someone who will fight for her, who will put her needs first. And you think that's you. I know that's me. She's my family, Dr. Lee. She's the only piece of my sister I have left, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt her again. He sat back down, looking defeated. What do you want from me? I want you to sign away your parental rights. I want you to make this easy for Lily to stay with someone who actually wants her. And if I refuse, then I'll fight you in court. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are and what you did to my sister and her child. Patricia Lee appeared in the doorway, having clearly been listening to our conversation. Jonathan, we need to talk about this privately. No, I said firmly. This conversation involves both of you. You adopted a child and then abandoned her when she became inconvenient. You have both failed in the most fundamental way possible. Patricia's face flushed with anger. You don't understand what it was like. That child was traumatized, difficult, impossible to comfort. She disrupted our entire household. She was 3 years old and grieving her mother. She made our lives miserable. Because you didn't love her. Because you saw her as a problem to be solved instead of a child who needed patience and care. Jonathan stood up again this time, moving to stand beside his wife. Ms. Carter, I understand your anger, but you need to understand our position as well. We tried to do the right thing. The right thing would have been to get her counseling, to be patient, to remember that you were all she had left in the world after losing her mother. We weren't equipped to handle a traumatized child. Then you shouldn't have adopted her in the first place. Patricia stepped forward, her voice cold with anger. We don't owe you any explanations. We are Lily's legal parents, and if we decide we want her back, there's nothing you can do to stop us. The threat hung in the air like a weapon, but instead of frightening me, it strengthened my resolve. Try it. Please try to take her back. I'd love to see you explain to a family court judge why you abandoned a 3-year-old child for 3 years and now suddenly want her back. Jonathan placed a restraining hand on his wife's arm. Patricia, that's enough. Is it, Jonathan? Because I'm tired of pretending this situation doesn't exist. I'm tired of walking on eggshells about a mistake we made years ago. Lily isn't a mistake, I said, my voice rising. She's a beautiful, intelligent little girl who deserved better than what you gave her. She's a reminder of my husband's poor judgment and our family shame. The words hit me like a physical blow. This woman was talking about a child, a little girl who had lost her mother and been passed from person to person, like an unwanted burden. Mrs. Lee, that child is currently in my care safe and loved for probably the first time in her life. She's thriving. She's happy and she calls me Aunt Ava because she knows I'm family. If you try to take her away from that, I will fight you with everything I have. Jonathan was looking back and forth between his wife and me, clearly torn between his guilt over abandoning Lily and his fear of the scandal that bringing her back would create. What do you want us to do? He asked quietly. I want you to do what you should have done 3 years ago. I want you to officially relinquish your parental rights so that Lily can be legally adopted by someone who actually wants to be her parent. And you think that's you. I know that's me. Patricia laughed bitterly. A single woman, living alone, no experience with children, supporting herself as an artist. What judge would give a child to someone like that over an established family? A judge who looks at the evidence, who sees that Lily has been neglected and traumatized under your care arrangements, but is thriving under mine. Jonathan walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. Ms. Carter, if we agree to relinquish our rights, what assurance do we have that this situation won't become public? You want me to keep your secrets? I want you to consider what's best for Lily. A public scandal about her parentage won't help her, and it won't bring your sister back. He was right, much as I hated to admit it. Exposing the affair and adoption scandal might satisfy my need for justice, but it wouldn't help Lily build a stable future. If you voluntarily relinquish your parental rights and cooperate with the legal process to allow me to adopt her, I won't pursue the matter further. And if we don't, then I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you are. Patricia was staring at her husband with an expression that suggested this conversation was far from over between them. Jonathan, we need to discuss this with our lawyer. Yes, he said. We do. Ms. Carter will need some time to consider your proposal. How much time? A week. Give us a week to sort through the legal implications. I stood up ready to leave this house that felt toxic with secrets and shame. 1 week, Dr. Lee, but understand this Lily is not going back to the Hendersons and she's not going back to you. She's staying with me where she's safe and loved. As I walked toward the door, Jonathan called after me. Ms. Carter, for what it's worth. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about Mia. I'm sorry about Lily, and I'm sorry about the way things turned out. I turned back to look at him, this man who had held so much power over my sister's life and her daughter's future. Dr. Lee being sorry doesn't undo the damage you've caused, but making this right for Lily would be a start. The drive home felt like emerging from a nightmare into reality. The Lee mansion, with its perfect facade hiding such ugly truths, the entitled couple who had treated a grieving child like an inconvenience, the casual cruelty of people who had everything except basic human decency. When I got back to my loft, Fiona and Lily were curled up on the couch reading a picture book together. Lily looked up when I walked in, her face lighting up with a smile that reminded me exactly why I was willing to fight the entire world for her. Aunt Ava Fiona read me 3 books, and we made cookies. Did you save any cookies for me? She nodded seriously and ran to get a plate of slightly lopsided chocolate chip cookies from the kitchen. I made these ones special for you. As I bit into a cookie that was somehow both burned and underdone, I realized that this was what family was supposed to feel like. Not the cold perfection of the Lee mansion, but the warm chaos of a little girl who was learning to trust again, surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally. Fiona stayed until after Lily was asleep, and I filled her in on everything that had happened at the Lee house. "Do you think they'll fight you?" she asked. "I think Patricia wants to, but Jonathan knows they don't have a leg to stand on. They abandoned Lily and they know it." "And if they don't relinquish their rights?" "Then we go to court and I make sure the world knows exactly what kind of people they are." Fiona smiled grimly. "You sound like Mia when she was determined about something. Stubborn and fierce." "Good, because I'm going to need to be both to get through this." As I settled into bed that night with Lily curled up beside me, I thought about the conversation with Jonathan Lee. He'd admitted his failures, shown genuine remorse, and even offered what might pass for an apology. But none of that could undo the years of trauma that Lily had endured because of his choices. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new legal complications, new battles to fight. But tonight, Lily was safe, loved, and home where she belonged. And for the first time since this all began, I felt like we were going to win. 3 months later, my loft had been completely transformed. Where once there had been careful order and artistic solitude, now there were finger paintings taped to the exposed brick walls, picture books scattered across the hardwood floors, and a child-sized easel set up next to my professional one. The space that had been my sanctuary for so many years had become something infinitely better, our home. Lily had settled into our routine with the kind of natural ease that made it seem like she'd always belonged here. Her nightmares had become less frequent, her appetite had returned completely, and she'd gained the weight that Dr. Chen said was crucial for her development. But more than the physical changes, it was the emotional transformation that took my breath away. This little girl, who had been so guarded, so careful about trusting adults, had blossomed into a curious, playful, genuinely happy child. The adoption had been finalized the previous week, making our family legal in every sense that mattered. Judge Hendricks had smiled when she signed the papers, commenting that she'd never seen a more obvious case of a child belonging exactly where she was meant to be. This particular Saturday morning found us in my studio working on what had become our daily art project. I was touching up a commissioned portrait of the Johnson family, while Lily worked intently on her own masterpiece at her little easel. "Aunt Ava," she said, holding up her paintbrush with the serious concentration of a true artist. "What color should I make this star?" I looked over at her canvas where she'd painted a night sky filled with swirling blues and purples. In the center, she'd outlined a large star but hadn't filled it in yet. "What color do you think it should be, sweetheart?" She tilted her head to one side, considering her options with the gravity of someone making a life-changing decision. "Yellow," she decided finally. "Like sunshine, but in the dark. That sounds perfect." As she carefully filled in her star with bright yellow paint, I watched her small hands move with increasing confidence. When we'd first started painting together, she'd been hesitant, afraid to make mistakes, apologizing every time she went outside the lines. Now she painted with joy, experimenting with colors and shapes, creating art that was purely her own. "This star is special," she announced, stepping back to admire her work. "What makes it special? It's like Mama, she's bright in the sky place watching over us." The simple statement hit me with unexpected emotion. Over the past few months, Lily had developed her own way of understanding and talking about Mia's death. The sky place had become her term for where people went when they died, and she spoke about it with the matter-of-fact acceptance that children somehow manage better than adults. "I think your mama would love this painting," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Can we show it to her?" I knew exactly what she meant. In the corner of our living room, I'd placed a framed photograph of Mia that had been taken during her graduate school years. She was standing in her lab, wearing her white coat, smiling at the camera with the kind of radiant joy that suggested she was exactly where she belonged in the world. It had become Lily's ritual to show Mia her artwork each day, chattering to the photograph about what she'd learned or accomplished. "Of course we can show her. But first, let's finish up here, and then I have a surprise for you. Lily's eyes lit up with excitement. What kind of surprise? The kind that involves going up to the roof. I'd been preparing this surprise for weeks, waiting for the perfect day when the weather was mild and the afternoon light was just right. Today felt like that day. We cleaned up our art supplies, carefully set Lily's star painting aside to dry, and headed for the stairwell that led to the roof access. Lily had been curious about the door marked roof access only since the first day she'd moved in, but I'd been waiting for the right moment to share this part of our home with her. The roof of our converted warehouse building was a hidden gem that most of the residents never bothered to explore. It offered a 360-degree view of Boston from the harbor in one direction to the university towers in another. But more importantly, for my purposes, it had a small section that received full sun and had been designated as a community garden space. Wow, Lily breathed as we emerged into the afternoon sunlight. We live so high up. She ran to the edge where a safety barrier prevented anyone from getting too close, pressing her face between the rails to look down at the street below. Look how tiny the cars are. They look like my toy cars. They do, don't they? But Lily, come over here. I want to show you something special. In the corner of the roof, I'd prepared a small garden space. There were child-sized gardening tools, a watering can painted with flowers, and several small pots with seedlings already started, but the centerpiece was a larger pot that currently held nothing but rich, dark soil. Is this where we're going to plant things? Lily asked immediately, understanding the purpose of the space. This is our garden, yours and mine. We're going to grow flowers and maybe some vegetables, and we're going to take care of them together. She clapped her hands with delight, already kneeling down to examine the smaller pots. What are these little green things? Those are tomato plants, and these are marigolds, and these are herbs that we can use for cooking. But I saved the best for last. From a bag I'd carried up with us, I carefully lifted a small cherry tree sapling, its roots wrapped in burlap, its tiny branches already showing the first hints of spring buds. This, I said, is very special. This is a cherry tree and we're going to plant it together. Lily's eyes went wide. A real tree that will grow big. A real tree. It will start small like you, but every year it will grow a little bigger and a little stronger. And in the spring, it will have beautiful pink flowers, and later it might even give us cherries to eat. Can we plant it now? Together, we carefully placed the sapling in the large pot, Lily's small hands helping to guide the roots while I held the tree steady. We filled in the soil around it, patted it down gently, and gave it its first drink of water. There, I said, sitting back on my heels. We've planted our first tree together. Lily stared at the little sapling with fascination. How long until it gets big? Trees take time, sweetheart. It might be years before it's really big, but that's okay, because we'll be here to watch it grow. Will it be here when I'm big like you? It will be here when you're big like me and when you're even bigger. Trees live for a very long time. She seemed to consider this, then looked up at me with those dark eyes that reminded me so much of Mia. Is it going to be our family tree? The question caught me completely off guard. What do you mean? Like in the picture books, families have trees that belong to them and they take care of them forever. I felt tears prick my eyes. Yes, sweetheart, this is our family tree. We spent the next hour working in our little garden, planting the other seedlings, watering everything carefully, and making plans for what else we might grow. Lily was fascinated by every aspect of the process, asking endless questions about how plants grew, why they needed water and sunlight, and whether we could grow cookies if we planted cookie crumbs. As the afternoon sun began to slant lower across the rooftop, I suggested we go back downstairs to start thinking about dinner. But Lily had one more request. Can we bring Mama's picture up here? I want to show her our tree. So we went back down to the loft and carefully carried the framed photograph of Mia back up to the roof. Lily positioned it carefully next to our cherry tree and began chattering to the image about everything we'd planted. See, Mama, We have a tree now and it's going to grow really big. And we have flowers that are going to be yellow and orange and tomatoes that we can eat in salads. Aunt Ava says this is our family tree and we're going to take care of it forever. As she talked, I found myself looking back and forth between the photograph and our little garden. Mia would have loved this, I realized. She would have been fascinated by the science of plant growth, would have researched the best soil compositions and growing conditions, would have turned our simple garden into an elaborate botanical experiment. But she also would have loved the simple joy of it, the way Lily's face lit up when she talked about watching things grow, the way this little space had instantly become a place of hope and possibility. "Aunt Ava," Lily said, tugging on my hand, "do you think Mama can see our tree from the sky place?" I knelt down beside her, looking up at the late afternoon sky where the first stars were just beginning to appear. "I think if anyone can see us from there, it's your Mama." "Good. I want her to see how pretty everything is." As the sun began to set over Boston, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that would have made any artist weep with joy, Lily ran around our little rooftop garden with pure delight. She inspected every plant, again watered them once more for good measure, and made elaborate plans for everything we would grow in the months and years to come. "Next year, can we plant a flower that's the same color as Mama's eyes?" she asked. What color were Mama's eyes? Brown like mine, but with little gold sparkles when she was happy. "I think we can definitely find flowers that color." As darkness began to fall and the city lights started twinkling below us, we gathered up our things and headed back downstairs. Lily insisted on bringing Mia's photograph with us, clutching it carefully as we navigated the stairs. Back in the loft, we settled into our evening routine. Dinner at the kitchen island, Lily chattering about her day while I listened to every word. Bath time with bubbles and stories. Then the bedtime ritual that had become sacred to both of us, choosing 3 books to read together, talking about our favorite parts of the day, and the final tuck-in that always included Mr. Buttons and a goodnight kiss. But tonight felt different. As I tucked the covers around her, Lily held Mr. Buttons close to her chest and looked up at me with unusual seriousness. "Aunt Ava, are you happy that I live here now?" The question surprised me. "Of course I'm happy. I'm happier than I've ever been." "Why do you ask?" "Because sometimes grown-ups say they want kids, but then they change their minds." My heart ached understanding that she was thinking about the Lees, about all the adults who had failed her before she found her way to me. "Lily, look at me." I sat down on the edge of her bed and took her small hands in mine. "I will never ever change my mind about wanting you here. You're my family. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Really, before you came to live with me, I thought I liked being alone, but it turns out I was just waiting for you." She smiled at that, settling deeper into her pillows. "I was waiting for you too, I just didn't know it." As I reached to turn off her bedside lamp, she spoke once more so quietly I almost missed it. "Mama, in sky," she whispered to Mr. Buttons just like she did every night. But tonight she added something new. "Thank you for sending me to Aunt Ava." I felt tears slip down my cheeks as I kissed her forehead one more time. "Good night, sweetheart. Good night, Aunt Ava. I love you." "I love you too, Lily, forever and always." I left her door cracked open, as had become our custom, and made my way to my own bedroom. But instead of going to sleep, I found myself standing at the window that looked out toward the harbor, thinking about everything that had brought us to this moment. 6 months ago, I'd been a solitary artist living a carefully controlled life in a beautiful loft, painting other people's families while avoiding creating one of my own. Then a phone call in the middle of the night had changed everything, bringing me a niece I'd never known existed, and opening my heart to possibilities I'd never imagined. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been legal battles, court hearings, therapy sessions, and countless nights when I doubted my ability to be the parent that Lily needed. But there had also been mornings like today, when I watched her paint stars, with the confidence of someone who knew she was loved unconditionally. Tomorrow, we would check on our rooftop garden, maybe start planning what other vegetables we wanted to grow. We would paint together in the studio, read books on the couch, and continue building the life that Mia had dreamed of for her daughter. But tonight I just stood at my window looking out at the city lights and thinking about the cherry tree we'd planted together. That little sapling would grow slowly, patiently, putting down roots and reaching toward the sky. In a few years, it would bloom with pink flowers that would remind us that beauty can emerge from the darkest seasons. Eventually, it might even bear fruit, giving us something sweet and nourishing that we could share. It was the perfect metaphor for what Lily and I were building together, something that would grow slowly and surely, something that would weather storms and celebrate seasons, something that would be ours for as long as we both lived. Mia's final gift to me hadn't just been her daughter. It had been the chance to understand what family really meant, what love could accomplish when it was given freely and without reservation, what hope looked like when it was planted in good soil and tended with care. As I finally headed to bed, I passed Lily's room and peeked in to check on her one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, Mr. Buttons tucked safely in her arms, her face relaxed and content in a way that spoke of dreams, filled with gardens and stars, and the certain knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. In the morning, we would wake up as a family. We would tend our garden, create our art, and continue writing the story that Mia had started when she chose to trust love over fear, hope over despair. The cherry tree on our roof would grow a little each day, just like Lily, just like our understanding of what it meant to be family. And years from now, when that tree was tall and strong and covered with blossoms, Lily would be able to look at it and remember the day we planted it together, the day we chose to put down roots and reach for the sky. It was, I realized as I drifted off to sleep, exactly the kind of legacy that Mia would have wanted, something beautiful, something lasting, something that would continue to grow and flourish long after we were gone. Our cherry tree, our family tree, our reminder that the best things in life take time to grow, but are worth every moment of patience and care we give them. In the quiet of the night, with Lily sleeping safely down the hall, and our little tree standing guard on the roof above us, I finally understood what Mia had known all along, that love doesn't end with death, it just finds new ways to bloom. And tomorrow, like every tomorrow that would follow, we would water our tree and watch it grow, just like our family, just like our love, just like the hope that Mia had planted in both our hearts. What would you have done in Ava's situation? Would you have fought for a child you'd just met? Or would the legal battles have been too overwhelming? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of family secrets and second chances, make sure to subscribe for more incredible true stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.